Then this is session 3 on climate change impact on agriculture in South Asia. As I mentioned, there are some Zoom presentations in this session. The first presentation is by Joyashree Roy from the Bangabandhu. She is Bangabandhu Chair Professor in the Asian Institute of Technology in Bangkok, Thailand. Yeah, please, thank you.
Wishing you all a very good morning. And I thank Dr. Shivakumar and the organizers for inviting me to present our work in this event. It was supposed to be held in 2020 during the Muji year, but due to pandemic, it got postponed. But I feel that this timing for holding this conference is very timely because it is following the IPCC's sixth assessment report publication. And as I'm going to present today, based on some of our recent publications and studies, so there, what we are showing, trying to show is the managing agro-ecosystem under climate change. And in that respect, what I feel is that we already know from the IPCC report that in terms of climate change, already human activity has driven change of approximately 1.1 degrees Celsius of global warming since pre-industrial level. And we know also from the recent report of Working Group 2 that at 2 degrees Celsius warming by 2050, people in sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, Central and South America, and on small islands are likely to experience food shortages leading to malnutrition. So adaptation actions are far less than necessary. So, however, the current global developmental and adaptive actions are not on track to achieve a climate resilient, sustainable world. And also we know from Working Group 3 report that the next few years will be extremely important because there are hard choices to be made about infrastructure investment, new service provision systems, policies, incentives, and public investment so that development pathways in all countries shift towards sustainable development and development becomes climate resilient. Now, to me, what I feel is that what we really need to be talking about is how to manage the climate risks in agriculture, because we are already living in a warmer world. Now, adaptation plans need to prioritize interventions based on economic, environmental, and social benefits, and need to identify agroecology specific interventions based on costs and benefits in terms of economy, environmental protection, and building resilience. Now, when we are talking about managing risks in agriculture, I feel that what we really need to do is position the whole adaptation strategies and climate action within the broader context of human well-being, especially in the developing countries like in the region. Because in this context, we need to understand that more than 15% are undernourished in the whole region, and India has 14% undernourished. And we know in 2030 SDG framework, the zero hunger is one of the sustainable development goals. So from that point of view, for managing risks, what needs to be thought of for this region is how to provide food and nutrition security, livelihood security, and employment security for the agriculture sector. So this can ensure the human well-being for the larger population. So risk reduction strategy needs to be nutrition security framing, needs to be framed within nutrition security framing, and it provides wider scope for finding solutions with multiple entry points. I will present some of the lessons learned from our various case studies over many years we have conducted with different teams from Indian river basins like Satluj, Shipra, Kaveri, Alakananda, Sabarmati, and Mahanadi, and in Nepal, Bagmati, and Pakistan, Indus River Basin. While in Bangladesh, we did an intensive study on 2017 flood in Haors of Sunamganj, and Sri Lanka and India, we have done some studies regarding home gardens. And in India, it was mostly in West Bengal, in Midnapur. So based on these studies, so what we found is that in case of climate change and climate variability, what really becomes risky is the market uncertainty. And given the market uncertainty, because the food production it becomes uncertain, and that can be managed when the food production is uncertain, the distribution and the delivery mechanism becomes important in order to reduce uncertainty. And from that point of view, what we really need to understand is that the market uncertainty leads to income uncertainty because it's the production related, yield related, and with the income uncertainty increasing with production uncertainty, price becomes volatile. And this becomes a major issue, not only for the household level, but across different sectors. So to manage the market from becoming volatile and reduce uncertainty, it is extremely important how we prioritize that. And also what we need to understand is that due to the extreme weather events also, market price becomes volatile, and which reduces the accessibility and affordability and leads to indebtedness that has become so prominent from all the studies across the region. While we were looking into the home gardens, which is a special kind of land management in many of these developing countries, there we have found that the pest attacks in home gardens are increasing due to the climate change, and which is leading to nutrition insecurity because home gardens provide household level nutrition security. So with increasing diseases for plants and animals, home gardens need to be managed for providing nutrition security more, and this can be appropriate adaptation strategy both institutionally and also through regulatory mechanism. And what we also need to understand is that only the market uncertainty and a production uncertainty reduction will not help unless there is a right kind of institution which provides this kind of security. So institution, we have seen that at different scale, the success stories show that wherever there is a multi-level governance mechanism, that means which is from the top down political will-driven federal structure-led policies, but also what is important is that how bottom-up needs are also included through participatory mechanism. And wherever there is participatory mechanism, the resilience has been much better in those regions. That has been our observation from the field. So what we think is that we do need sustainable solution models, but for that, there is need for investment in investment management in climate service provision, because it's only the technology cannot solve the problem unless there are enabling institutions for their diffusion and there is social acceptance through capacity building. So what we understood is very clear that unless there is a systemic approach. That means it's just not about, say, for example, watershed management or just providing market access to the farmers or information access to the farmers. But we need all these components to be addressed simultaneously and managed in such a way that they fit into each other. Say, for example, it needs to be the mainstream adaptation in the development plans, and which can lead to watershed management, because water is one of the most important input in the production process for reduced production uncertainty. And then there is need for contingency crop planning based on the changing climate and the local context, based on the agro-advisory service support. And there needs to be market access and information asymmetry needs to be reduced, considering this as a public service. So through public investment and insurance, credit and risk management instruments, market-based instruments need to be complementary with all these efforts. So in conclusion, I would say that what is really our observation is that climate variability risks have been there always, but they are exacerbating with climate change. And big opportunities lie in targeting climate services, advisories, insurance, precision agronomy, so sound business model development. And there is need for right partnership, because science-based actions, policies, market and non-market incentives, investment in institution need to come together to take a strategic decision. So investment both in natural capital like soil moisture management, soil quality management, physical capital like the technology for precision agriculture, knowledge and human capital, the kind of information needs to be provided, but also the local traditional knowledge needs to be integrated, and training of the farmers are also necessary. However, the community partnership for social capital building and regulatory mechanism and public service and climate service through institutional capital building is also extremely important, and which are termed very commonly as green jobs in these sectors. So with these words, I will stop here, but with one word that in Bangladesh, the initial development in agriculture had been possible due to the early 1970s, say for example 1973, 74, under the leadership of the father of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. There were many institutional arrangements which were made and which led to development of the science-driven practices, and which brought the farmers and the scientific institutions closer, and a different support was given through fertilizer provision, for using the domestic gas based units. So all these have led to whatever self-sufficiency Bangladesh has achieved in these years. But now in climate change scenario, there has to be a second layer of improvement in the institutional arrangement, and similarly for all the South Asian countries. And thank you very much. I'll stop here. Thank you. I'm just suggesting here the kind of literature which we have published and which I have used here for making presentation. Thank you again.
On Zoom. Can you hear me, Sheshakumar? Please go ahead on Zoom.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. So first, I thank Sheshakumar sir and Raman sir and the organizing committee for providing me an opportunity to present here the climate change impacts on agriculture in India. So I'm Sheshakumar Goroshi, working as a scientist in India Meteorological Department. So just this is my presentation outline. Just I'll be covering the risk due to climate change in India, probable future impact of climate change in India. So some scientists have already carried out the vulnerability assessment over India, uh, especially pertaining to agriculture. And so there is a scheme called NICRA, and just I'll be presenting what are the results. So obtained the recent studies related to climate change impact in Indian agriculture. So there are also some government initiatives in India for climate change impact over this one, agriculture. And there are already scheme for national action plan on climate change, and there are some adaptation strategy for climate change, particular in reference to agriculture. So there is a 15-minute time. I'll be not taking much time. So this is a risk due to climate change in India. So as you are aware, India is one of the risk-prone area, especially for natural disasters. So this two-third agricultural land in India is prone to drought, and especially 12.5% of the geographical area is vulnerable to flood. And there are other areas like northwest parts of the India is vulnerable to frost, and this central and northern parts are vulnerable to heat waves, and the eastern coast is vulnerable to cyclone. And the recent studies tells that India lost approximately 5.05 million hectare of crop area is lost due to cyclone, floods, and cloudbursts and landslide. And this data is up to November 25, and this analysis was carried out in India, and shared this results recently. So these are some probable future impacts of climate change in India. This IPCC and other research in India reports that probably 10 to 40% loss in agriculture production in India with the increase in temperature by 2080 to 2100. And even this recent studies in India reports that approximately 4 to 5 million ton in wheat production will decrease for every increase in 1 degree increase in temperature throughout the growing period of the wheat, and this is considered the carbon fertilization. But even though this happens, if farmers adopt some simple adaptation technologies like change in planting dates and crop varieties could help in reducing impact of climate change relatively. But kind of extreme weather events like drought, flood, and cyclone are negatively impacting the production and the farmers' livelihood. And this is the probability of yield loss associated with the frost, especially in the northwestern region, is likely to be decreased. So this increase in Himalaya, glacier in Himalaya will affect the irrigation, especially in Indo-Gangetic region, which in turn would have consequence in the food production. Again, this increase in temperature in future is likely to reduce the fertilizer efficiency, and this will lead to increase of fertilizer requirement for meeting the future food production. So again, they suggested in one of the report that the pathogens insects populations are strongly dependent on the temperature, humidity. If any increase in these two parameters will change the dynamics, and this will result into yield loss. So in this direction, some more research are required to understand the relationship, how the population can be controlled and managed. So even this increase in sea surface temperature, river water is likely to affect the fish breeding, migration, and harvest. And even they have suggested coral reef in Indian seas are predicted to be decreased from 2040. So there are some studies, vulnerability studies in India are already carried out. This Indian Council of Agriculture Research has undertaken this research. So in 573 districts to understand the vulnerability assessment. So out of 573 districts, they have obtained that 109 districts out of 573 is very high risk areas. And out of those 573, 201 districts are in risk. So because of understanding this in detail, they have started the project called this project network National Innovations in Climate Resilient Agriculture during the 2020 and 2011. So in that analysis, they found out that rice is irrigated rice is going to reduce 4% yield. This research was carried out in 2022 using the data of 2010 to 2039. So in rain-fed rice, they found that 60% rice is going to be reduced by 2022. So wheat is, have already presented the 1 degree rise in every rise in temperature will reduce the 606 million ton in wheat. And yield reduction will be therefore between the 6 to 23% by 2050. And because of lack of sufficient chilling hours and extreme weather events, poor pollination, shifting of apple cultivation may be observed from low to high altitude, and this is, and the reduction in their yield is also there up to 30%. Yeah. This is impact of climate change and livestock and fisheries. They have studied that especially on cattle and buffalo investment, and they estimated the loss of milk due to heat stress by 1.8 million tons, and which is about 2% of the total milk production in the country. And there is also a decline in availability of water may further affect the animal productivity. And their research related to marine and fisheries, they said that this sea surface temperature has decreased by 0.2 to 0.3 degrees centigrade along the Indian coast for the last 45 years. So there will be a latitudinal extension in abundance, farming and breeding activities in several species will be affected. So there is some, but just I am also presenting the case study which were conducted in 2022. Dr. Bal from the CRIDA. CRIDA is one of the renowned institute which carry out the research related to climate change and agriculture. So their recent study on water demand in maize is projected to decrease under changing climate in India. The results suggest that the total crop duration, so that is 3 to 7 days, will be reduced, and the crop water requirement will be 88 to 69, and irrigation water requirement, this 1 to 54% is projected to decrease. So their study has identified the their criteria thresholds for phenological phase wise. This information will be helpful for the farmers for varietal improvement and programs in study in the near future also. And another study conducted by Mr. Sarwell in 2022, this is impact of climate resilient technology in minimizing drought impacts. So they have conducted the study in the drought affected areas. They found that the farmer income reduced by 54% due to 54% in agriculture, and livestock they found that 40% yield their income reduced in the drought affected areas. In another village, they took as a climate resilient village. So they found that 35% income they got more compared to the drought affected areas. So these are some of the government of India initiatives for supporting the to increase the income of the climate change affected areas. They are supporting the financial support they are giving to promote the use of advanced technology like machine learning and artificial intelligence to predict the yield and all. So recently, NITI Aayog has partnered with the IBM for using the artificial intelligence means crop yield production. And also they are promoting the AI sensor based smart farming. And recently, Government of India has partnered with Microsoft for empowering the smallholder farmers. And they are also encouraging the use of drones for smart agriculture. And there are a few more studies out there and promoting the studies in India. So there are the popular 8 missions which are India is implementing. That's the National Solar Mission and Mission for Enhancing Agriculture, Sustainable Habitat and Water Mission, Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem, Mission for Green India, Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, Mission for Strategic this one change. So there are also impact-based studies also being carried out. These are helpful, and these are also some of the other departments like Indian Meteorological Department, ICR, are conducting several studies to help farmers to reduce the impact of extreme weather conditions, to reduce losses. So this is one of the scheme, Gramin Krishi Mosam Seva Yojana, where this India Meteorological Department and ICR together are providing weather-based crop advisory. So to reduce the losses due to extreme weather conditions. So these advices are given twice in a week, and also special advisories are issued during the any extreme event, so that farmers can adopt some managing plan some activities they can reduce the this one. So IMD is providing 5 types of weather forecast to reduce the losses. Now, because this is a 3-hourly based weather forecast, so that any mandis can save their production they have put outside. Otherwise, if any cyclone is there, farmers can take any harvest and all. We can post harvest at great. He can place somewhere. And medium range weather forecast for next 10 days, farmers can plan for harvesting and all. So extended range is also there. Long range weather forecast is there for season. So they can have better crop based on the rainfall and all. So they can plan better. So there are also some, as I said, the pest and disease impact pages are also developing a platform part, pest and disease forewarning based on the weather forecast data for the entire India. So we already developed 6 and 7 states. So and we have also validated those forewarning models. Maybe from the upcoming season, we are implementing operationally in India under GKMS scheme. So again, dissemination system, we are using different platforms of disseminating our weather forecast information to farmers. Approximately, we are providing to 43 million farmers. We are providing SMS, sending SMS, and through WhatsApp groups, we are covered more than 12 lakh farmers, and they are getting advisory twice in a week. And we are also tapping the state government agriculture extension system to provide the information to the farmers. So there, IMD has developed some of the climate risk tools which can help farmers to understand what are the climate risks and how strategies can be adopted to reduce the losses due to climate change. So dealing with the ICR has also taken some initiatives for vulnerability assessment, which I said earlier, and they're also carrying out to develop the district level contingency plan. They already developed for some districts and also planning for the implementing the entire India. And also they are carrying upscale the climate resilient technology through a resilient wage approach for the entire India, and also for strengthening the capacity of stakeholders. They are planning for some other programs. So these are some of the adaptation technologies for climate change, new varieties and new farm management practices change. And the Government of India has also launched several agriculture insurance schemes to help the farmer to support financially farmers. There are Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana and weather-based crop insurance scheme. So like that, some schemes are also there which farmers can help. So they can take at least better crop in the upcoming season if they lost in this season. So several studies in India as well as abroad that said that CO2 is increasing, CH4 is increasing, Earth atmosphere temperature increasing, and frequency in extreme events are increasing. So required some rigorous studies where they can find accurately where they are increasing, for what they are increasing, so that adaptation strategies can be planned accordingly. And some more studies are required, especially for crop yield and variability and how shifts in relative productivity and production. So that's all, sir. I think I have to finish within 15 minutes.
Suresh Kumar, thank you very much for your presentation. Now, as I mentioned, we are now, it's past 11:30, whereas we still have presentations from Jayakumar Gurung, supposed to be at 11:15. So we are delayed by about 20 minutes. Please come, Jayakumar. And after him, there will be a presentation of food security in Bangladesh by Muhammad Faruqi. Is he here? Oh, okay. After him. So we'll have 2 more presentations from here, and after that again we will have 1 more presentation on video from Anthony Whitbreda from ICRISAT in Hyderabad. So I now invite Dr. Jayakumar Gurung to make his presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Myself, Jayakumar Gurung. I, on behalf of team, Dr. Dibas Pasnet and other, he's a senior scientist, and other research associate, going to present in this international conference on the climate change and food security in South Asia, the situation of Nepal, climate change and food security. So this is my immense pleasure to be here to share this Nepal's experience. Probably I am the only one from Nepal. So, and there are a lot of talk about Himalayas and glacier melt in earlier presentations. So that this would be very much interesting, I believe, for all of you to hear what is the situations in Nepal. So in my presentation, I will try to cover what are the evidences we have in Himalayas, even if you already know what is happening, but I would like to tell some things, evidences. Then climate change projections, the effect in the futures, and downstream impact, and connecting it with agriculture, food security situations, and vulnerability. And finally, I would try to explain the climate change adaptations through information communication technology. That is already also explain the Indians' perspective. Well, this is here what is happening in the cryosphere in the Himalayas. As we know that Himalayan regions is considered as a third pole, the largest amount of snow, ice and snow in the world. But these reserves are considered exceptionally vulnerable due to climate change. And hence, the glaciers in the most Himalayas regions are losing mass in response to global warmings. And if this trend be continued, in the very soon, a lot of models, climate models, they have projected that the day will come, well, we will not see ice and snow in the Himalayas. That is a disaster. So let me give you one example of a glacier lake that is explained in also in the former presentation. Yesterday also it was talked in the deliberations. This is one example of Imza Cho Glacier Lake. You see, this is the image in the 50 years, 5 decades, how glaciers lakes are being formed and getting enlarged. You see from the different images. In images in 1962, it seems there are little or no ice, lakes in the foot of the Himalayas, but the formation of lake started, and then the volume of water increases gradually, and finally in the 2010 it became such a big lakes already. So look, this is one example of another lakes, Chorolpa, which is very vulnerable for bursting, glacier lake outburst that was also talked in earlier presentations, Govt we call it. So the downstreams, there is a big threat of this Govt. It is said that, the measures, it is measures that more than 2,000 lakes has been recently formed, such kind of lakes. And they all are vulnerable. You see, blocked by very loose, unconsolidated marine, glacier marine. So the downstreams are very much threat. It is said 47, the research has said 47 on the watersheds of Nepal, 3 main rivers are at high risk of bursting. And definitely cause catastrophic damage in the downstreams. The impact, as we know that the multiple impact in the downstreams, the immediate we can observe in the extreme event in the weather that cause increasing intensity and frequency of floods, landslides, and drought. And millions of Nepalese are at risk. In fact, even to downstreams, billion, if we can say, if we include India or Bangladesh, are at risk, including reduction in agriculture production, food insecurity, water stress, loss of forestry, biodiversity, and even to the extent of, direct impact in the damage in infrastructure. So eventually, that would lead the increasing food insecurity. Let me tell something about IPCC's consideration in this global circulation model, GCM modeling, that we consider IPCC considerations on what we call RCP, representative concentration pathways. And I talk a little bit about RCP 4.5 and RCP 8.5. As you know that this is a greenhouse gas trajectory, different scenarios of the climate futures. And what happens if we, control, if we regulate the temperatures in one hand, and if we don't do anything, what happens? That is represented by RCP 8.5 respectively. And most of the climate models reveals that climate change in Himalaya region is fast and is very visible. It's a lot of evidences we have, and will increase further in all seasons. And climate change in Nepal will be significantly warmer and wetter in futures, but will decrease in precipitations during pre-monsoons. This is what modeling suggested. So this is from, and let me show you some technical graphicals representations how it's going to change. You see in the x-axis this is a change in precipitations percentage, and y-axis change in temperatures. In the Himalayan regions, if we take the higher, the three graphs in the top represents monsoons, June, July, August, September seasons, the changes, and the three graphs in the down is the situation changes in the winter seasons, that is December, January, February, March. So we have a very contrast monsoon season and then dry season, and the plot shows that there is an intense monsoon, concentrated monsoon in the futures, and in the pre-monsoon or in the dry season, the plots are very scattered. So this reveals that the pre-monsoon conditions situation in the respect of temperature and pressure is very uncertain. It's very uncertain. So this uncertainty is definitely reveals that there is a big challenge. So most models projects higher monsoon precipitations, and winter precipitation is uncertain. So again, this reveals that warmer future, but models vary in magnitude of change. So this uncertainty indicates that we should have a very sort of flexible, versatile adaptations approach. In one single adaptation approach may not work. So we need to have a flexible on adaptation approach. Again, second graphs I would like to see here show you the global circulation models project increase. This is maximum precipitation in 1 day and precipitation in 5 days. This is the two plots showing in RCP 4.5 and RCP 8.5 in the two scenario. Both shows that extreme higher extreme precipitation means higher flood and related sediments. So intense precipitation in a very short time, that brings a lot of intense flood, erratic floods, intense flood, and also related sediments load. That would be a disaster in the downstreams for the infrastructure, loss of agricultural land, and so and so. I would like to show some figures, the plots of the different changes scenario in RCP 4.5 temperature, how the projected range of average annual mean temperature in the futures. You see, as in the Nepal, the eastern part, the monsoon in Nepal comes from the southeastern part, from Bangladesh. So eastern part is relatively wetter and moisture, so we have a more moisture zones. Well, if we go western is more drier. So this is a change, and futures also has a similar change as shown in the map. Similarly, this is a projected range of average annual temperature change in Nepal. This reveals that in the future, 2036 to 2065 models, this also show that in the future the drier western side would be more drier, like we have now. And talking about the precipitations, this is the precipitation in futures 2016 to 2045 in RCP 4.5 models. And if we look the same plots in the further 2036 to 2065, this monsoon concentration has been changed. It has been little shifted to west. So this is what model has indicated, the source. So definitely there would be a very visible change in the futures, both temperature and precipitations. Now I would like to talk a little bit how the situation in agriculture in Nepal. As you see, this is a plots of Nepal, the agriculture land, very little agriculture land in compared to India and Bangladesh. We have just 24% of agriculture land. But still 2/3 of the population average is depend on agriculture. They are engaged in agriculture, and half of the farmers cultivate. But the challenge is half of the farmers cultivate less than 1 hectare. So lands are so fragmented. Very small patch of lands are used for agriculture. But still, the contribution of GDP from agriculture is significant, 26%. So we are agriculture dependent country. And food, when we talk about food self-sufficiency in Nepal, as I showed in the previous map, drier in the western side, especially this Karnali province, we call it, is a very hard and geographically very challenging. That is, food sufficiency is very low and food security indicators. We have considered the 3 pillars for the food security as an indicator: availability, access, and utilizations. So based on these 3 pillars of food security, Nepal's is still very big challenges we have, and based on the data, Nepal ranks 82 out of 113 countries in the Global Food Security Index. So we are very much lag on food security, and significant regional disparity in food availability with exposure to climate events, especially drought in the hills, in the mountains, difficult geographical conditions, and poor road networks. That are the main challenge for food security in Nepal. That all leads to the high dependency on external food aid. So this is the map of food security condition of Nepal. So insecure situations lies in the very dry area, dry season, and there is a contrast. In the we have a good harvest season, better harvest season, but in the lean season there is a more challenges. So we don't have in contrast to Bangladesh case, almost Bangladesh every year, every time is harvest season, but we have a very to contrast lean season and harvest season. And lean season is very much challenging for the in respect of food security. You see, you can see in the map. And harvest season, we would have a better situations. In the lean season, mostly people go abroad for seasonal migration. In the neighboring country, harvest season is better. So we have initiated some climate initiatives, climate adaptation initiatives, mostly adaptations. That is climate smart agriculture CAC that we also are learning from neighboring country Bangladesh and India, and climate change including for the economic growth and development. So as the access of ICT is pretty much good, so we are trying to make the best use of this ICT for climate smart agriculture. So besides some initiatives like in the agriculture perspective, so nutrition management such as using of leaf color chart, improving the time, improve water irrigation management, soil conservation techniques such as zero tillage, crop intensification techniques, and use of drought tolerant and high yield varieties. These are some of the practice that Nepal has initiated, both the government and private sector. And others include infrastructure development for risk reduction, so for effective response such as establishing a gene bank, check dams, embankment of the river channels, and fishery in aquacultures are the other practice that Nepal has started. And this is one interesting diagram that shows how dependent we are with the monsoon and the climate change. You see the major crops we have paddy, maize and wheat. And if we look in the last historical data and very recent one, there is an increasing trend in the production, but still if you see the paddy, which is a stable crops in Nepal, that paddy is very much, their ups and down in the harvest, yield is very much aligned with the monsoon. So this indicates that we are much dependent on monsoon. Our paddy production is, the wet seasons, the only crops we have, the paddy, is more dependent on monsoons. So since we have a lot of perennial rivers, so we can, decrease the dependency of monsoons through other infrastructure such as irrigations, so that we'll have all season irrigations, around the year irrigations. So if we could build that, could be a good adaptations for the in the agriculture. Yeah, let me talk a little about the weather index, agro-advisory that Nepal has initiated. I mean, has done some efforts. This is in fact one pilot program where Kumar was also as a consultant was there almost a decade before, and CCAPs, in support of CCAP, we had taken some support from India for weather forecast. Actually, Sky Weather provided some information to Nepal, and that was validated by Department of Hydrology, Meteorology of Nepal. So based on that hydrology, meteorology validated informations, Nepal Agriculture Research Council, NARC, we call it NARC, they used to, the expert from the NARC, they used to prepare a advisory based on the forecast, and that advisory content was disseminated for the farmers. And we had a call-free, toll-free, and first of all, we disseminated from the dashboard that message to farmers through text message, and there was a very good feedbacks. And they also, there was a provision of toll-free, farmers used to call us, and that was a very successful piloting we made in support of CCAF and the team. Actually, we also, as a learning process, we sent farmers to India for exposure visit, and they had a very good experience from India. And now Nepal itself, I think Department of Hydrology, Meteorology, DHM is strengthened probably some through World Bank's project. And now we are we have a forecast, 7 days forecast. And based on that, Nepal Agriculture Research Council and NARC, Environment Division, they are providing this agro-advisory service. They also publish agro-advisory bulletin regularly, and so far we are following them. It is working at least in a good shape. So this is one example how we can learn mutually also from a neighboring country and other globally. So this is my last slide. In fact, I noted that a lot of talk in the previous presenter also highlighted the collaborations. Actually, we are in the same basins, and the climate change itself is a typically transboundary issue that is affecting, affecting all of us. So we could share and collaborate in the basin approach, such as the one I talk about, climate smart agriculture and other things, sharing of informations, hydrological, meteorologicals, that would really be very useful to combat the climate change in holistic matter. So with this, I stop here. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kumar. Very nice presentation. As I mentioned, we are behind time, so I'm now requesting the next presentation, Food Security in Bangladesh. It's supposed to be by Dr. Muhammad Sadisuddin Farooqi, Director General of the Ministry of Food. Unfortunately, he is not here, so Dr. Mustafa Farooq Al-Banna, who is the Associate Research Director of the Food Planning and Monitoring Unit of the Ministry of Food, he is going to make the presentation now on food security in Bangladesh.
International expert on climate change, respected participants, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. This is Mustafa Farooq Al-Banna, Associate Research Director, Food Planning Monitoring Unit, Minister of Food. In my presentation, I will discuss on food and nutrition security in relation to climate change. And the content of my presentation includes introduction, food and nutrition security, climate change, impact of climate change on food security, Bangladesh initiatives to mitigate negative impact on climate change, and conclusion. Considering the introduction, we can say that Bangladesh, the government of Bangladesh is responsible for ensuring sustainable food and nutrition security for all as stated in the Article 15A and Article 18(1) of Bangladesh Constitution. We know that Bangladesh has already achieved self-sufficiency in many food items like rice, fish, and vegetables, and in many food items the production has increased. But considering food security, it requires to fulfill all dimensions of food security. And you know that there are many challenges to achieve food security. Climate change is one of the great challenges to ensure sustainable food and nutrition security for all in Bangladesh. And it is important to mitigate the negative impact of climate change on food and nutrition security in our country. So first we we can define the food and nutrition security. Actually, once we consider only the availability is considered as ensuring food security, then the scientist shows that the availability and accessibility is considered food security. In 1996, during the Global Food Security Summit, that's time the first time the decision comes from the 3-dimension on food security, consider availability, access to food, and utilization. And after in 2012, the definition comes from the Committee on World Food Security, that is, all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to healthy and nutritious food, which is consumed in sufficient quantity and quality to meet their dietary needs and food preference, and is supported by an environment of safe water, adequate sanitation, health services, and care, allowing for a healthy and active life. We know that there are major 4 dimensions, previously 3 dimensions, and another dimension including stability, that the other dimension like availability of food and access to food, and then food utilization, nutrition, and the overall all dimension, it needs to be stable. So stability is another dimension considering food and nutrition security. And climate change, I think from last 2 days, you are all are very well known and many expertise that the climate change can be defined as a long-term significant change in the expected pattern of average weather of a specific region over an appropriately significant period of time, normally accepted as 30 years. And if we see that the impact of climate change on global situation, we know that the impact like extreme weather, that high temperature worsen and increase the frequency of many types of disasters, include storms, flood, heat waves, and drought. Then air pollution, that's air pollution are also linked with climate change, and rising seas. Then health risks, as per WHO, that climate change is expected to cause approximately 250,000 additional deaths per year between 2030 and 2050. Then warmer, more acidic oceans. The Earth oceans absorb between 1/4 and 1/3 of 4 fossil fuel emissions and are now 30% more acidic than they were in pre-industrial times. And finally, that cause effect on ecosystem, that climate change is increasing pressure on wildlife to adapt to changing habitats, and first these shifts can fundamentally transform entire ecosystem. And considering climate change that affects everyone in some way, it's indisputable that its most negative impact are borne disproportionately by certain groups like women, children, indigenous communities, and the economically marginalized. And this is also true for Bangladesh, considering the cyclone and flood in 1991. The death rate of women was almost 5 times higher than men. Now see the impact of climate change on agriculture. That evidence shows that the factors of agriculture production, that is water, labor, energy, equipment, might be affected by climate change, and climate change has adverse effect on crop production globally due to an increase in temperature, storm, salinity, and rainfall. And evidence shows that climate change will affect those countries adversely that are still more dependent on agriculture and have lower financial and technological strength to cope with the impact of climate change. So Bangladesh and other country, they are more vulnerable in this world, and already different negative impact are going on. The poor people will be more vulnerable as the adverse effect of climate change that will increase the dependency of developing countries on imports, and as a result, price of the essential products will be increased. And impact of climate change on food security. If you consider the 4 dimensions, that availability, the consequences of climate change, that is reduced agricultural production, the change in suitability of land for crop production, change in precipitation pattern that could affect the sustainability of rain-fed agriculture in some areas, and increased temperature could result in lower yields for some crops in some regions. That is, that availability that includes the total amount of availability, includes the own production or import or any other. So any country may affect, so the other countries also can be affected. And in access to food, that is another dimension. We have 3 types of access to food, that is physical access, financial access, and cultural access. Here, considering the financial access, the food price and income is very important, and lower yields in some areas could result in higher food price and loss of income due to the potential increase in damage to agricultural production. Similarly, physical access to food, that is considered the damage of infrastructure, roads, and other from climate change. This is important. And utilization, that food security and health impact include increased malnutrition, both undernutrition and overnutrition. Ability to utilize food might decrease where change in climate increase disease. Impact on food safety due to change in pest and water pollution, all are under utilization. And then stability, that instability of food supplies due to an increase in extreme events and instability of incomes from agriculture. That is globally, that the impact of climate change on food security, and this is also true for Bangladesh and other countries. And impact of, if you consider the impact of climate change on nutrition and health, we can see that climate change has multiple negative impact on global public health, that reduce quality and quantity of crops, result in increased food and financial insecurity, that leading to malnutrition, that both undernutrition and obesity, undernutrition like stunting, wasting, micronutrient deficiency, and overweight and obesity. And then diet-related non-communicable disease such as diabetes mellitus and cardiovascular diseases. The health effect of these disruptions include increased respiratory and cardiovascular disease, injuries, and premature death related to extreme weather events, change in the prevalence and geographical distribution of food and waterborne illness, and other infectious disease and threats to mental health. So both the situation of nutrition and health that is affected by climate change in globally and also Bangladesh and other countries. Now see the effects of climate change in Bangladesh. If we consider Bangladesh situation, that Bangladesh is one of the most adversely affected countries in climate change. According to the Global Climate Risk Index 2021 report, Bangladesh is the 7th most vulnerable country to climate adversities. Agriculture of Bangladesh, especially in the coastal areas, have been affected the adverse effect of climate change such as salinity, soil erosion, drought, and prolonged inundation. Cyclone Aila and Cyclone Sidor are the example as the negative impact of climate change. Considering the last 30 years, we see that the country has experienced nearly 200 climate-related disasters, including drought, extreme temperature, flood, storms, and these events have killed thousands of people, destroyed homes and livelihoods. Now we consider the climate change on food security in Bangladesh, that agriculture is one of the most sensitive sector to climate change, and particularly change in temperature, rainfall patterns, drought and floods. And considering the coastal area, that Bangladesh are occupying more than 30% of net cultivable land, which constitutes the more than 52% of for net cultivable areas. But the expected 30 centimeter and 50 centimeter sea level rise by 2030 and 2050 will lead to loss up to 3% and 6% coastal agricultural land in the respective years, along with declining 8 to 17% of rice production. So this is from these studies that the projection shows that there is a huge effect on food security, especially in production situation. Apart from extreme temperature, natural disasters such as cyclone and tidal surge causes immense loss and suffering to livestock through destruction of forest crops as well as shelter. So the negative impact on livestock is also in Bangladesh. Then considering the fish production situation, we know that Bangladesh is self-sufficiency in fish, and we are very proud that we are one of the leading country in the world for the production of fish. But there are, and we consider the species of fish, that 26 species of fish in Bangladesh, and all of which are sensitive to particular salt and freshwater condition. The change in tidal patterns as well as the increasing saline intrusion into the freshwater river associated with climate change will impact on fish population also. Then if we consider the disease situation, that climate and health situation, climate change will also affect the distribution of climate sensitive disease like malaria prevalence increase in line with the warmer, and recent year shows that the prevalence of malaria is increasing in Bangladesh. Other diseases such as dysentery, diarrhea, dengue, hypertension are associated with heat stress, asthma and skin disease are also increasing in Bangladesh. And increasing flooding as well as drought is resulting in a decline in the availability of clean water, causes waterborne disease in Bangladesh. Now we see that the initiatives from Bangladesh to mitigate climate change. We know that since 1990 to the first Earth Summit, the Global Earth Summit, Bangladesh is actively participate in global forum and implementing different program and different strategies. And in line with the UN Framework Convention of Climate Change, Bangladesh has formulated the National Adaptation Program of Action, that is NAPA 2005, and updated NAPA on 2009, which are the documents to identify immediate and urgent needs for adaptation to climate change. Then in 2009, Bangladesh formulated the Bangladesh Climate Change Strategy and Action Plan, and that is the policy document of the government to address both adaptation and mitigation of climate change. And Bangladesh also formulated Delta Plan 2100, that the that plan aim of the is to ensure water and food security, economic progress, and sustainable climate. Adaptation is a critical component of this plan. If we consider the recent 5-year plans like 6 5-year plans, 7 5 years plans, and present running that 8 5-year plan, all 5-year plans give emphasis on adaptation and mitigation of climate change. And we have also formulated the National Sustainable Strategy from 2010 to 2021. This strategy has been prepared to meet the formidable environment challenges that Bangladesh faces in the way to development. And we have also Perspective Plan 2021 and Perspective Plan 2041. Both the plan give emphasis on climate change. And we have Country Investment Plan for Environment, Forestry, and Climate Change. And this plan responds to the urgent need to address environmental degradation in Bangladesh and to improve the country's ability to meet the threats posed by climate change. From Ministry of Food, we are preparing and implementing different country investment plan for food security, agriculture, and nutrition since 2010. And our first country investment plan was prepared for 2010 to 15, and second country investment plan 16 to 20. Our third country investment plan on sustainable, nutrition sensitive, and resilient food system already drafted finally. And in this investment plan, we consider climate change issues and resilience issues, and for the implementation of our different national policy like National Food and Nutrition Security Policy 2020 and National Food and Nutrition Security Policy and its plan of action from 2021 to 2030. And we have also other initiatives to mitigate climate change in Bangladesh, like Muji Climate Prosperity Plan. Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh has announced the Muji Climate Prosperity Plan at decade 2030 to build resilience for achieving prosperity at the first Climate Finance Summit of the Climate Vulnerable Forum in July 2021. The Muji Prosperity Plan is specific to the climate change agenda and to securing Bangladesh's prosperity and independence path amid the major and rapidly increasing threats of global climate change. This plan was prepared in line with our currently 5th 5-year plan, that is 8th 5-year plan. And the plan proposes a number of hallmarks, new initiatives that will help to anchor the Muji plan and accomplish its goal and objective. Considering the program and intervention level, we, Bangladesh consider 6 thematic areas considering the that climate change action plan, that food security, social protection, and health. Under this thematic area, many interventions have completed and many interventions are going on, like research on climate resilient, rice variety and extension, risk reduction and adaptation measures in the context of climate change, impact on health sector in Bangladesh, a measure for supplying safe drinking water and social security for women and children exposed to adverse effect of climate change. Another thematic area like comprehensive disaster management, we have establishment of cyclone resistant housing at the IL affected areas from Borishal, Khulna and Chittagong district. And considering infrastructure, we have reconstruction and repair of embankment along the Karnofuli River. And research and knowledge management thematic area, there are sustainable cropping system for drought and coastal saline prone areas in Bangladesh, pilot project on temperature and saline tolerant crops to adapt with climate change. Then another thematic area, that mitigation and low carbon development, that pilot initiatives on reduction, reuse and recycle of water in Gulshan, Baridhara and Dhanmondi areas of Dhaka city and Nasirabad and Khulshi areas of Chittagong city. And another thematic area like capacity building and institutional strengthening, strengthening institutional capacity of climate change unit of Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Actually, considering the climate change issue, this ministry is the focal ministry of Government of Bangladesh, and with the coordination from this ministry, all ministries and agencies are working to mitigate the negative impact of climate change in Bangladesh. Considering international forum that recently in 2021 that UN Food System Summit was held, and the ambition of that UN Food System Summit 2021 is to launch a collective journey of transforming our existing food system to give us the best possible chance of delivering of the 2030 agenda. That to achieve our sustainable development goal by 2030, we need to transfer our existing food system, and here the climate change issue is one of the important issue under the action track or objective 5, that is building resilience to vulnerabilities, shocks and stresses. Is the proposing action to ensure that food systems which are affected by conflict, environmental and economic shocks and stress and can maintain functionality, recover from the effect of harmful events and improve to a better of state. Minister of Food is coordinating the post-summit activities, and we have already prepared a pathway document for the implementation of implementation all SDG goals by 2030, considering the transformation of food system. And we were considering different coalition. There is a climate change related coalition, and Bangladesh is working with this. And another international forum which was held in December 2021, that is Nutrition for Growth Summit. And in this summit there are 3 thematic areas like health, food and resilience. Under the resilience thematic area, climate issues are considered, and you are all aware of that the COP26, the regularly that conference, that last conference, the 26th conference of the parties, that even that UN framework on climate change issues, and the decisions were also taken from COP26 to begin work on the next set of financial commitment by developed countries to support adaptation in climate vulnerable developing countries, and on rules on common timeframes for updating national determined contributions. I think all these international forum and all commitment need to be harmonized, and the government is and other stakeholders working to implement the commitment from this international forum. Now, considering all issues, that Bangladesh is exceptionally vulnerable to natural calamities which are being exacerbated by the effects of climate change, and a collaboration with the government, NGOs and local people are required for proper implementation of the policies for building resilience of the communities. Here local people's experience is very important for the implementation of different policies and strategies. Continue innovation in climate change adaptation with a focus on coastal areas is also important, and implement innovative solutions that empower and make vulnerable groups more resilient. And further research on impact of climate related hazard, considering Bangladesh like floods, drought, cyclone, flash floods, river bank erosion, salinity intrusion and landslide is required. And finally, it is important to implement the pathway commitment from the UN Food System Summit 2021, including climate resilience development pathway and other commitment from international forum. and I think from government, academia, and all stakeholders, if we work together, it is possible to mitigate the negative impact of climate change from Bangladesh, and development partners are here to support us. This is from my side, my presentation, and thank you all. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mustafa, for your presentation. And as I informed you, we are really behind in our finishing this session 3. We are behind by 55 minutes. Now, the last presentation is a video presentation from Dr. Anthony Whitbreda from the International Crop Research Institute for Semi-Arid Tropics in ICRISAT. So I request you to please play the video from Anthony Whitbreda.
Smart agriculture and digital delivery of agro-advisories in South Asia. My name's Anthony Whitbread, and I'm working for ILRI, based in Tanzania. And I'm presenting this paper on behalf of a range of colleagues who worked on this program, funded by the Monsoon Mission of ITM and the Indian Meteorological Department, and in collaboration with many ICAR institutes in India, particularly CREDA, which is based in Hyderabad. And this was work that some of my colleagues and I were doing as part of our role in ICRISAT. Now, I'll be talking mainly about climate risk and agriculture in the dry lands, and how we manage its inherent tactical risk with digital tools and decision support systems for disseminating automation of climate-informed agro-advisories. I'll also briefly touch on the scaling work that we've done via development of different platforms, dashboards, and apps. And a lot of this is relevant to the drylands area where I'm working, which is Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. But I think it's relevant to many agricultural systems that are facing high climate variability. Now, farmers are used to facing risks from a whole range of areas, including pests and diseases, the costs of inputs, prices received for products, market risk, and storage risk. But for the drylands in particular, climate risk remains a huge disincentive for investing into risk-reducing technologies and to improve productivity. Farmers typically cope with climate risk through a tactical response, selecting different crop varieties, crop types, changing enterprise, moving towards livestock and forage as well. And much more agronomic tactical responses, such as the timing of planting, adjusting in-season inputs or the target output. And in commercial systems, we use risk-reducing measures such as crop insurance, contracting, forward selling, and increasingly it's knowledge intensive. We're using climate information services, which are improving, and we're also using a range of IoTs, or Internet of Things, connected sensors, and digital agriculture. So these are kind of tactical responses. As we get into climate risk that is strategic, managing climate risk that is strategic, we need to start thinking about redesigning farming systems, and doing that through understanding the historical and future climate, modeling these scenarios out, designing new farming systems, co-designing new farming systems for resilience and market opportunities, and building infrastructure and institutions to support this adaptive capacity. I won't talk about strategic climate risk management further. Most of my talk will be dealing with climate risk in the tactical sense. We're all aware at this conference of huge climate variability that we're facing as agricultural researchers, and helping farmers and value chain players deal with this climate risk and this high climate uncertainty. Some of this uncertainty is associated with year-to-year variability, and climate drivers such as the El Nino, La Nina, ENSO events. And here we have the record of Indian monsoon since 1871, showing many of these climate drivers, ENSO drivers, showing anomalies way outside the range of 10%. But also in normal years, non-El Nino years or La Nina years, there still is high climate variability in the monsoon. To some extent, we can predict better forecasts and monsoon activity, but still climate variability is still a huge challenge to our agricultural systems, particularly under rain-fed agriculture. And we also have the advantage that a number of forecast products and climate information is becoming more useful and higher resolution. We have short and medium range forecasts that have high potential use in agriculture and are available at fairly reasonable resolutions to the farm. As we move into extended range and seasonal climate forecast products, again, I think they're between medium and high applicability to agricultural decision making, particularly seasonal climate forecasts. But the limitation with such products at this stage is their available resolution, which are often at country level, whereas we need them at much lower levels to make them more practical for use. A lot of my work when I was with ICRISAT and with a number of partners around India, including Microsoft India and the ICAR system, was developing pilot programs for trying to bring together climate information, climatology, agrometeorology, with agronomy and agricultural advice. Surprisingly, much of our agricultural extension system has largely ignored climate information in its advisories. So this attempt, the Intelligent Agricultural Systems Advisory Tool, ISAT, was an attempt to demonstrate how this might bring these two areas together. The approach is pretty common. I think it's not anything new, but the way we put it together in a package with decision trees to drive decisions, I think is useful. I'll just briefly describe you how we disseminated this ISAT tool and some of the impacts it had on farmers over several years. We are using this tool as well in our work in Africa and many countries, and particularly in the dryland areas. It relies on extremely good data and modelling, the development of decision trees based on our understanding of how farmers will make decisions through the season, collated from expert knowledge. It then brings together messages that are relevant to the context, and it disseminates these messages. And so there's a lot of analytics of historical climate and crop modelling that underpins this ISAT methodology. The decision tree approach is really the, I guess, innovative part of it. We group together years based on analysis of historical climate data and develop these decision trees in that response. Here we have an example of a pre-season decision tree that's based on seasonal climate forecasts for a position in India, which is Untitled. And here we have two responses, a long-term forecast, which could be La Nina or El Nino, with rainfall, different rainfall decisions indicating the sorts of practical planning a farmer should put in place. So these tend to go to farmers 6 to 8 weeks prior to the season. Once we're in the season, we have another set of decision trees that are relevant to decisions that a farmer may take during the season. Again, it's a decision tree approach. We're looking at last week's rainfall, the next week's forecast, 2-week, and the 2-week outlook. And we're capturing data from various sources, which are mostly publicly available: observed rainfall data, forecasts from the national system, and 2-week outlooks from the national Met system. Now, these are then formed into extension advisories that are then messaged to farmers on a weekly basis. We piloted this in an area in Anantapur, which is very low rainfall, and farmers face a constant challenge with managing climate variability. And we found that climate information is particularly useful in planning the season, in the sowing time, in the harvesting. And we also found that piloting context-specific agro-advisories did profoundly change sorts of cropping intensities and enterprises that farmers were using. Here we have an example of treatment villages, more or less cultivating different sorts of crops, whereas the control villages, which weren't receiving climate information, continued with a very traditional system of groundnuts. This translated through into effects on their productivity, and overall we found a 56% increase in productivity where farmers were able to get access to context-specific climate information for the sorts of crops and soils that they're farming with. We also found that farmers rated the advisories very highly and very much appreciated having context-specific advisories. And we've written up this work into a paper that's under review in Climate Services currently. The challenge with climate information, of course, is the scale. We can make excellent advisories if we're making them very context-specific, and farmers will tend to use them in those cases, but getting towards that context-specific requires integrating data from multiple sources and facilitating data analysis and visualization. So this methodology, Next Generation Agro-Med Advisory System, has been created out of this response that our extension services need help in bringing together climate information with agronomic and other advice. And we've brought together these different dashboards to show you how this is done. So the Next Gen Agro-Met Advisory System that was developed by a range of partners in India is envisaged as a one-stop shop for all the data products related to climate analysis, visualization, analytics, and then decision automation. Eventually, strategic and tactical farm decisions can be mapped automatically for an instance of the season with a capability to deliver messages through SMS and other platforms. And so it's seen as an assistance to extension officers, not to replace the advice with automated information, but actually provide prompts for an extension officer to extend much more relevant information that incorporates climate information as well. Here's an example of a dashboard which we built with CREDA and ITM and IMD. It's a dashboard-based platform that brings together information and analytics, and with pull-down menus for various locations, a user can plot out different aspects of rainfall and temperature and likely responses to different conditions. And eventually, in the longer term, we would like to automate some of the decision making, and that it prompts the extension officer with certain extension information. For example, in this case, these set of conditions has prompted the system to produce a message saying the dry period is expected to continue with isolated rains. Since the crop is in pod development stage, avoid disturbing the soil. So this is a pilot example. It's now completed. Our project is completed with the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, and they're now taking ownership of these platform systems. Building on this sort of automation, we've then been able to produce with IMD a range of apps that then take climate information that's already available on websites through into smartphone apps. And here we have two examples of apps. One is called Megdut, which is more relevant for farmers. It's been downloaded in many of the districts across India, and it's available in 12 Indian languages as well as English and Hindi. And as of about 12 months ago, it had disseminated over 350,000 advisories. At their request, we then built another app that was more useful for cities, and it's called Malsum. And it's also been downloaded many hundreds of thousands of times now, and provides weather information for about 200 cities and forecasts for over 450 cities. So this is the sort of possibility. Once you have collated information, you have some automation, you can start to build these sorts of apps that make information available to users at their fingertips. I haven't got much more time to talk to you today, so I'll just conclude by saying that climate-informed agro-advisories are an excellent tactical risk management approach. They do rely on the availability of high-resolution meteorological data and soils data and forecasts. We put a lot of effort into analysing historical weather information, and a knowledge of the farming system, the agronomy, the sorts of responses farmers make or can make in response to weather is an important aspect of developing context-specific agro-advisories. Nevertheless, particularly in seasonal climate forecasts, probabilistic nature of forecast is a challenge to communicate. And we argue, as many colleagues from different organisations argue, that this requires capacity development in its users. Training, for instance, to appreciate the value of climate services for farmers, we need training, we need awareness campaigns, and we need to build capacity in our users. We can't get away from this either. And I think digital tools are also a game changer for scaling information and getting information into the hands of users. So I'd like to thank you for your attention and close there, and acknowledge again my partners and collaborators in many institutes across India. And I'd like to finish with a slide of my organisation, which is Zilari. Thank you very much for your attention.
Nice video presentation from Anthony from ICRISAT. And as I was mentioning to you, lunch break was supposed to be at 12, so we are now 40 minutes late. So in this session 3, there were 6 presentations. Out of 6 of them, 4 were either videos or Zoom. So the authors who presented, they're not here. But there are 2 scientists, Jayakumar Gurung and Mustafa Farooq al-Banna, they are both here. So what I plan now is just 10 minutes. If anyone has any questions for the 2 speakers that are here, we can take 10 minutes, and after 10 minutes, we can go for lunch. And then
we can take some question for the session 3 also.
Yeah.
Session 2 also.
Session 2 also. Okay. If it is session 2 also, then there are some speakers are not here. For example, Muniruzzaman is not here.
Muniruzzaman already left.
Yeah, he left.
But Dr. Billal is here. Dr. Kamrul is here.
Okay.
So we can take some audience.
Okay, so that means in session 2, 2 speakers are here, and as I mentioned, session 3, 2 speakers. So let us take 10 minutes of discussion. Anyone who has got any questions for the speakers, then after 10 minutes, we can go for lunch. So let me see any hands raised for any questions. So there are no questions, no general discussion. As I mentioned yesterday, of course, no questions. No, there are no questions from anybody. Thank you very much for your consideration of the late finishing of these 2 sessions. So let us go for lunch, and then the next session, session 4, is going to start at 2 o'clock. And let us make sure that in other sessions, we should not be any late. We should fix time, and we should finish in time, so that each time we can have good general discussion. Thank you very much. Take the lunch break.
lunch is in the same place as we have taken tea in the morning. So you use please in the front side gate. You go out from the front and turn right. You will find. I think the cadet will show you the way of going there. Thank you.